Hello, everyone. We are waiting for you to come in. Right now, we have 61 of us in the Zoom. I will wait for 1 more minute to allow some of those that are having any tech issues to give them just a few minutes to get in. We are so excited to have you on the call. And let's see. I just want to make sure that I can see the chat as well. Yes, I can. Perfect. And okay. All right, so it is now 3 minutes after start time. So I just wanted to say welcome to the Dermatology Residency application panel. We are very grateful for the Tool for Diversity, the Student National Medical Association, and the Latino Medical Student Association for collaborating and putting on these great panels for multiple specialties. So what I would like to do first is to introduce our panelists. I am Dr. Candace Heath. I am an assistant professor of dermatology at Temple University in Philadelphia. I specialize in pediatric dermatology and adult dermatology, and one of my areas of focus is skin of color. So I will briefly introduce the panelists, and then we will jump right in to some of your questions. So first up, I have from down the street, Dr. Keller, and he graduated from the Sidney Kimmel Medical College in 2005, and he completed his dermatology residency at Jefferson, which is where he is right now. He's been on faculty since 2009. He's the Associate Chair of Education and Program Director for the department, and he participates in multiple medical education and mentorship activities. So I would like to move to the next panelist, and you can just wave when I say your name. So the next panelist is Dr. Pamela Allen. She is Vice Chair and Residency Program Director of the Department of Dermatology at the University of Oklahoma, and she received her medical degree from Loma Linda, and she actually completed a full internal medicine residency, and then she went on to complete a dermatology residency at the University of Oklahoma. And guess what? She's still there. Wonderful, right? And she's involved in many diversity initiatives, and she's also the faculty sponsor for the medical school's SNMA chapter. That is so nice. All right, so next up we have Dr. Janine Luke. She's an associate professor and program director at Loma Linda, which is in the beautiful Southern California region. And she has a Bachelor of Science degree in Physiologic Sciences from UCLA, and she has a master's degree of kinesiology and nutrition from California State University in LA. And while she was in medical school, she was inducted to AOA, and she completed her dermatology residency in New York City at St. Luke's Roosevelt. Oh, and so did I. I didn't even tell you all where I did dermatology. I did dermatology at St. Luke's Roosevelt as well, just like Janine did. And what else did I want to tell you? She specializes in medical and cosmetic dermatology, and she loves taking care of patients with hair disorders and pigmentation disorders. And she has served nationally on multiple committees, and her diversity efforts actually won her, she was awarded the Presidential Award because of her diversity efforts and commitment to the AED, which is like a big deal if you don't know what that is. All right, and then finally, we have, last but not least, we have Dr. Rebecca Vasquez, who's an assistant professor. You see how we have people from different regions? I planned that. Okay, so we have Dr. Rebecca Vasquez, who's an assistant professor of dermatology at UT Southwestern. She graduated magna cum laude from the University of Texas in Edinburgh, Texas. And then she received her medical degree and completed her dermatology training at UT Southwestern, where she's on faculty now. And she is the assistant chief of service at one of the local hospitals in the area as well. And she loves skin of color, student education, and health disparities. So I am going to jump right in with our panelists, and we will start with some of the questions that have come in. And so really the first question I would like the panel to start with is, what can students do to stand out in this virtual interview world? A lot of our students out there, fourth years, they're applying right now. And if they don't have all these other things to worry about, they need to worry about what can they do to stand out in this virtual interview world. Dr. Keller, do you mind taking that question?
Yeah, so I think a few things I'll say that I think, most of you are probably well aware of because you're a lot younger than me and more tech savvy. But I think the important things to keep in mind first is the virtual environment is going to rely upon bandwidth. So making sure that wherever you are, you've set yourself up in a situation where you have reliable Wi-Fi, you have a room where you can look professional. There's not people walking behind you. There's not people making noise. And obviously that's not accessible all the time, but when you have a little bit of a time to plan for it, it's a good idea. Trying to avoid backgrounds that make you look like you're a ghost floating in the middle of things. Everyone's seeing that, where for whatever reason, what you're wearing and what the background is just doesn't play well, because that's going to be distracting and it's going to distract from you. So I think trying to focus on finding a place, even if it's a blank white wall behind you, but that shows you as the star, I think is going to be important. I think it's important in this year to understand the challenges that COVID presents. Try to understand how your institution is dealing with it, how that's impacting residency and training from a medical student standpoint as well as a residency standpoint. Because I think there's going to be questions about that this year that obviously wouldn't have happened in the past. I think you want to try to be prepared with what answers you can have in advance, but don't make yourself feel like they have to be stock answers. You want to sort of have a general idea of what you're going to say about things, but you want to speak a little bit off the cuff because it's going to come off a little bit less robotic. And I think in Zoom, we can come off more robotic than we could because people can't see what's happening with my hands below me. So you lose a lot of that nonverbal communication. I think that you want to make sure you have questions to ask the programs, because I think more than any year before, people are going to be interested to find out what you want to know about their program. I think, in previous years, we thought of those questions as something to inform the applicant. I think now this is going to be something that's going to inform the interviewer as well. How really, truly interested are people in our program? I think there's a lot of anxiety on the part of programs that they're not sure, in the absence of away rotations and absence of getting to know people in a little bit more of a personal way, how interested you really are in their program. And that's a two-way street. I know there's a lot of anxiety on the students' part, but I think that anxiety extends over to the programs as well. I think you want to be confident, but you also want to try to avoid being cocky. And I think that's something that is always a difficult line to run, because you want to really sell yourself, but you want to do it in a way that feels genuine. I think you want to figure out what you can from the website. So a lot of programs are spending time putting together videos, putting together other resources to try to sell their programs, having virtual meet and greets, those types of things. I think whatever you can learn about those programs, especially that you're truly interested in, will show, again, additional interest. Practicing with, these virtual interviews that are mock, as well as just with a family member or friend. They don't even have to interview you about dermatology, but just getting used to being on the camera, understanding what your bandwidth looks like. Things I would try to avoid doing is I'd avoid a background, at least a bad background in general. But if you can avoid a background, I think it's a good idea because most of them are distracting. You want to make sure you're on time. You want to make sure you don't look tired. You have the opportunity to be in an environment that is comfortable for you. So you want to do everything you can. You want to have good body language, leaning into the camera a little bit as opposed to sinking back away. I think those are all things that innately, if someone was to ask us, we think about it, but it's easy in that pressure cooker to sort of forget about those things. Don't say, I think I know all the answers to my questions, or I've asked them all already. Ask again. And I think that goes for a non-virtual interview, but here again, even more, it's your opportunity to engage and learn a little bit more about the program. try to relate to the program. If you have things that you think make you a good fit for that program, or a particular interviewer that you think you have something in common with, whether it's a common class or a common school or whatever it happens to be, try to bring that up in conversation if you're able to. Try not to send copious emails and communication. We're getting more communication this year than we ever had before. So try to make what communication you have targeted, concise, appropriate, more than just like, I'm really, really interested in your program. Try to bring that across as much as you can. And don't assume you won't get a spot. Never, ever assume that there's all these other wonderful people interviewing and you don't have a shot. If you are interviewing, you want to feel confident that you have an opportunity to get that spot. I think if you do all those things and avoid some of those no-nos, I think you're going to find that you will be ahead of at least 50% of people when it comes to the virtual interviewing process.
Thank you so much. I think that was a great summary of to do and not to do when you are on your virtual interview. So I hope that you all will take those to heart for sure. But I know what some of you all are thinking. You say, wow, I would love to get an interview. But before I even get there, how is COVID going to impact my application? I haven't been able to do the research that I plan on doing. I have not been able to make the connections. Will the programs even understand what I'm going through? What should I do? So, Dr. Luke, would you like to dive into that question? I know it's a loaded question.
Yeah,
It's an
it's a
important one.
huge topic, and I know that it's something that's at the forefront of a lot of students, applicants, everyone's minds. And so we wanted to, as a group, we have this group of the Association of Professors in Dermatology, where all the program directors, the faculty, all of the people who really make a lot of these decisions for the residency application process, we all wanted to come together, and we had a few goals in mind. Most importantly, we wanted to have transparency in the process, but we also wanted to make applicants aware of the fact that we know exactly what you guys are going through. This is a tough time, not just a tough time for applicants and students, but tough time for us as physicians, as dermatologists, for everyone. And so we actually put out a consensus statement, and the consensus statement was amongst all of the program directors, or a good majority of the program directors. And like I mentioned, we wanted to have a few goals in mind. And the first and foremost thing was to kind of allay some of these fears and concerns and let applicants know that we understand that COVID has affected several things. COVID's affected your ability to do away rotations, to really get to know programs and residents, and to kind of really see what the culture is like, to see what things are, the clinical experiences are like, what the learning experiences are like. And so we know that that's created a huge issue, but we also know that, just like Dr. Heath was mentioning, you're not able to do some of the projects that you had wanted to do. And so first and foremost, part of the consensus statement, and I'll just break down some of the key portions of it, we're basically, letting everyone know that we are discouraging in-person away rotations, meaning you don't have to feel any pressure to try to rotate with a program at this time. We do understand that this is, something that people are thinking, well, if I don't get in front of the programs, how are they going to know me? And Dr. Keller gave some great tips on ways to stand out. But in order to kind of even the playing field and just make sure that no one feels this overwhelming burden that they have to try to go out and try to get in front of programs, we're discouraging all in-person away rotations. That being said, some programs are going to offer virtual experiences or even virtual electives, because we're not sure whether or not that would be accepted by your program, their program, things like that. It's not something that has been mandated across the board. So those programs who want to have a virtual experience, they're offering those. Those who are not, then they're deciding not to participate. And so that's okay too. We also don't want people to feel like, oh my goodness, I need to do this virtual away or anything like that. What we're trying to do is create experiences and opportunities if you don't have a home dermatology program, or if you feel like, you know, all the things that you were trying to do or wanting to do, some of those opportunities, you know, have been cut short. These are options that you can have, just additional options, additional resources. And then we also wanted to touch on the actual application process. We know that because of COVID-19, some people, you know, have had delays in their step 2 scores or their clinical skills test. And so we are basically, again, we understand that. We're not going to hold that against any applicants. And so we really want people to know that as part of this consensus statement, we're in support of students and applicants. We know that this is a hard time for everyone. And we really want to make sure that people don't feel overwhelmed or burdened. The goal of the consensus statement and kind of our transparency in this whole process is to make things easier and to not feel so overwhelmed with the process, because we understand, you know, not only is the process affected, but some of you may have been affected, your family members. We know that some areas of the country have been hit disproportionately harder than others. And so what we're trying to do is really make sure that people understand that we get it. We understand that COVID has changed everything as we know it in medicine and dermatology, and that we are in support of still making sure that we'll select great residents, we'll have future leaders and great dermatologists to come.
Thank you so much. I think that was a great summary of the consensus statement that has come out of the Association of Professors of Dermatology. And it's amazing that all of the programs across the country, almost all of them, are taking the same stance. So this is the first time that we're going through a pandemic in our lifetime. And this is your first time. So it's everybody's first time. So a lot of the rules that you used to have, a lot of the advice that we used to give year after year, it's just different now. It's different. And so we have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that is the summary of the year 2020. So if you can master that, you can really master anything. Your whole life is going to feel easy after 2020. I promise. I promise.
Yeah,
but
there are just real quick, there are some other, you know, things, more specific guidance as that, you know, enters the conversation. I can certainly jump in with those additional details about, you know, number of programs to apply to, interviews, things like that, as we kind of naturally progress. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, can you just tell us now? Because now
Yeah.
they're going to be sitting on the edge of their seats. Okay,
Sure.
what did the consensus say about interviews, and are they going to apply to 95 programs?
Right,
What's
exactly.
encouraged and not encouraged?
Right. So basically, we've also set out that we're going to do all virtual interviews, and so all programs have, you know, consistently agreed we're all going to do virtual interviews. Now, before, when we were doing in-person interviews, people had to fly, and so there was like a physical, you know, you had to really make a commitment. And, you know, as far as now with virtual interviews, people can just say, okay, well, I'm going to Zoom and I'm going to take, you know, 3 interviews in the same day, or do this or do that. So we've tried to coordinate, you know, a part of the process, but we really want to encourage applicants to apply to 40 to 60 programs. Okay, this is our general recommendation. Now, obviously, we recommend that you specifically seek guidance from your own mentors or people at your institution who can, you know, look at your specific situation and give you more tailored guidance. But we have basically said, as a general rule, to apply to 40 to 60 programs. And then we also recommend taking no more than 12 to 15 interviews. Now, I know sometimes people think like, oh my gosh, but I got 20, like I got to do all of them. So basically, you know, there's research and that has shown that, you know, beyond 12 interviews, if you have at least 12 interviews, you'll have a 95+% chance of matching. Now, that being said, I know people are like, but it's me. Like, I want to get, you know, to 100%, make sure that I'm not, you know, the one who doesn't match. But we really want to, especially in light of what's going on for everyone, we want to make sure that there are enough interviews to go around, that people who have, you know, plenty interviews, that they maybe only take a certain amount, so that way other students can have additional opportunities. And we're really kind of not, you know, just on the program side, but really wanting to make this a joint effort on everyone's part. So really encouraging the applicants, you know, if you do have a lot of interviews and you know that some of the other interviews you're not necessarily, it's not on the top of your list, you know, please respectfully decline. We understand, and it would offer and open the door up to another student who may not have that many interviews. And so that was basically the kind of guidance that we have for the number of applications as well as the number of interviews to take.
Thank you so much for expanding on those details. I think those were important points to get in right when you did. And so I know that people are thinking, well, what if I'm not perfect? What if I have a quote unquote low step score, or I had to take a leave of absence, or I didn't do well on a rotation? Like something happened to make me not have that perfect application. A, is it still okay to apply to dermatology? And B, where do I address this? Do I just pretend that it never happened? Do I ask a letter of recommendation writer to address it? Do I address it in my personal statement? You know, these are all complicated questions that students really wrestle with. Dr. Vasquez, can you kind of speak to this topic?
Yes, I certainly can, because I do have a little bit of experience with this type of, I should say, when I was applying, I have some experience with this type of issue. First and foremost, I think it's really important to talk to, and if you don't have one, you really should have a mentor. Have someone who you can go to, who knows you fairly well, who you trust, right? And explain the situation. I had to do that. I was a reapplicant. I didn't match the first time. I didn't know if I should talk about that in my personal statement. I didn't know, you know, do people talk about that? Like, how do you explain, you know, that situation? So I was very lucky that I had a mentor who, you know, was very experienced, right? So he had been, he was on the resident selection committee, so he had a lot of experience. He had seen a lot of applications. And so, you know, he, you know, met with me. We discussed my application, and he said, no, I really do think you need to explain, you know, why it was that you think you didn't match, and how have you changed your application. Okay, so it really just depends on the scenario, but maybe meeting with your mentor to discuss the issue that you're concerned about, because I think there's some things that you may not need to include, you know, you don't need to talk about, that you can brush over. Some things are going to be self-explanatory, maybe in your CV, you know, your ERAS, it's a long application. They're going to have you include a lot of things, and maybe the medical leave of absence, you know, it can be inferred from your application that you don't need to talk about it, right? But that's where it's important to talk to someone about your application, and whatever you're concerned about, whether it's a low score, whether it's a bad evaluation, whether it was a poor score on a rotation, to see how best to bring it up. For me, I actually brought it up in my personal statement, but I have seen where sometimes letter writers are able to eloquently explain the situation because they're very familiar with the applicant. And I think it actually helps if you know someone who knows your story and could kind of explain the situation, right? So I think if you have someone who knows the situation, who's able to explain it eloquently in your letter, that is very helpful. And then, you know, in your personal statement, you kind of just, you know, you can maybe say a couple of words about it, but for the most part, it's been explained by the letter writer. And so I think those are a couple of ways that I would approach it. And I do think that you want to talk about it in the interview, because it may be one of those things where you don't want someone to sort of guess what happened, right? Don't leave them guessing. You tell them, oh, you know, I understand I had a low score. This is what happened. Don't leave them to their own devices, right? Always kind of, and the best way to approach it is someone asks, like, how do I prepare? You got to practice. You got to practice going over your story, practice with your parents, practice with your mentor, mock interviews. So that way, you feel really confident and you're very strong in when you're explaining the situation. So that's what I would say, talk to someone who you're close to, a mentor, explain the issue, see if what's the best way to confront it, whether it's in your personal statement, whether they feel comfortable writing about it because they know about the situation. It may be both, and practice telling your story. That's what I would say.
I think those are all great pieces of advice for the students. I mean, really, because sometimes students don't really want to ask that type of question in a public forum. So I think to really get that type of answer is very important. It's really going to help a lot of the students. I'm really excited about that you shared those tips. So I know that although we are in academic dermatology, everyone on the panel, we're still dermatologists. So I know that we look younger than we actually are. So do not underestimate how many application seasons the people on the Zoom have been through. So I bring up Dr. Allen, and I really want her to tell us when an application, now this could be the 1,000th application for dermatology residency that lands on her desk because she's been doing it that long. What makes that person jump off the page and you say, I really want them in my program?
Oh, goodness. Let me tell you, just to personalize it, I'm here in Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, and we are a small program. We have 9 residents. We're actually going to 10 residents next academic year. And we usually have somewhere around 400 to 450 applications that come through just for 3 or 4 little slots. Yes. And so it's overwhelming. We divide up all of the applications amongst our full-time faculty. We have 6 full-time faculty members. We look through every single application, no matter what the scores are, no matter what the region they're coming from. We look through every one to find those pearls, those golden nuggets that may come through that may help to enhance our program. And so some of the things that I think as I look through that 1,000th application, many times it looks the same and you get tired. But I look for qualities and skills that a person may have even outside of medicine. What makes them well-rounded, okay? We know you've got to medical school, you're book smart, you've got to the point that you're at. So with that aside, what else makes you who you are? We want people that can help enhance our program and make it diverse. And so we've had applicants that had previous careers. Maybe they were nurses first and they flipped over and said, okay, I can do this. I'm going to medical school. Or maybe they were an opera singer. We had an opera singer at one point. We had someone that had a kind of a public career in the acting arena, and he actually was kind of a hype man for David Letterman in New York. And so that's what he did for a career. And so he was very outgoing and engaged. And people who've had MBAs, those who've had other academic additions to their name, maybe they've had a master's in public health and they've done research in community and health disparities. Maybe they've had an MBA and have had a business background or in IT. there's so many things that can make a person a little more well-rounded and enhance our program. Leadership experience, not just being a part of you know, some sort of a group or an association as a member, but you have stepped up as a leader in the organization. That shows that you can take initiative and you're able to lead a group of people, be able to go over conflicts, resolution, all of these things that a leader has to have. And so we want people as well that can demonstrate grit and resilience. Maybe they come from a single parent home. They've had to take care of their brothers and sisters. Maybe there has had to be multiple jobs that they've had to have during college and maybe even through medical school, yet you were able to survive and be successful. And so we're looking for those who had a little more outside holistic experience that will, you know, stand out. And it's important to put those on your application. A couple of other things. We're in the Mid-Southwest area. So yes, usually a lot of our candidates are from this Midwest region. And so that doesn't mean that we're not going to look at those all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. But we go through with a fine-tooth comb to identify if there are certain connections to the Midwest that this person may have. And many times we'll look through the personal statement, and people many times will personalize their personal statement. And that means making it individualized for each institution that you apply to. And that will grab the university that you're applying to and make them understand why you want to come to their program. What is it that they offer that excites you, and something that you really want to gather within your armamentarium. So I look for those who've maybe put a little paragraph at the end of their personal statement stating why they want to come to the University of Oklahoma. Maybe they've had a job in the summertime and they have connections to this area. They see themselves working in this region. Maybe it is the what's offered in dermatopathology and the cosmetics and surgical skills that you can accomplish in this region. And so it's important to do that. Otherwise, it looks like you're just applying abroad and you really don't have, you know, interest in coming to that program. So those are things that will make you stand out amongst the crowd.
Oh, that was really good. That was good stuff. And if you all are not checking out the chat, oh my goodness, there are some nuggets in the chat. So you definitely need to check out some of the questions and answers going on in the chat. A few times in the chat, people were asking about, you know, what if I don't have a dermatology program at my medical school? What should I do? How can I get out there now that, you know, COVID has happened? Like, what can I do? So what can they do to connect to dermatologists or find a mentor if they do not have a program at their medical school? I don't know who wants to jump in and take that.
I mean, I can say a few words about that. So one thing is I'm hoping in about a month, we're going to have an APD statement helping students find a mentor. We're trying to come up with a Google spreadsheet for people who don't have a mentor at their program to be able to be hooked up with a mentor. In the absence of that, there's many program directors across the country that are more than happy to mentor students, and I do that for a number of students, some even that have mentors at their home program but really want an outside point of view or would like to come to the Northeast, and maybe they're down south and they feel like, you know, having someone up here is a little more accessible to what the landscape's going to be like in that area. So I think there's nothing wrong with reaching out to a program director in the area, asking friends, asking people you may know that go to schools in those areas, because that's how a lot of people end up finding me, find out who their mentors are, where they found those things. Look for people that belong to the APD, people that are committed, people that speak at the AAD. All these people have gone out of their way to sort of be involved in education. So I think they're great people to talk to. And I think with my job, that's why I do most of the things I do. I love talking with students. I spend most of my time on the way home from work on Bluetooth, talking to students about things and helping them jump over hurdles, because you really feel like you're making a difference in someone's life when you do that and opening things up. So I'm sure everyone on this panel, including, hundreds of people across the country, are just looking for mentees to be mentors for.
Yeah, and I put in the chat as well, you can also go to your local derm department that is near your school. So if you don't have a home department, you can go to a local or reach out to a local school that does have a derm department. Some of them are able to make some exceptions as far as allowing, outside people to rotate if they don't have a home program. So it's always good to ask. Some institutions, obviously, with the restrictions, some are very, very strict and there are no exceptions. But, if you're in an area where there are a couple different programs near you, it wouldn't hurt to reach out to see. I know for us, they're very strict at my institution. So they're actually only allowing any rotations from one other institution, and that's like the sister institution. But what we've decided to do at our program is we've, said if students want to be a part of our grand rounds, if they want to be a part of our journal club and present, we're offering those opportunities. So that is definitely something that you can look into. Like I mentioned, not everyone may have a virtual elective, but they still may have an opportunity for you to get to know them. And with that being said, I'll kind of talk about something else that we're trying to do nationally as well. We're trying to have some virtual meet and greets. And that's basically, via Zoom or some other virtual way where applicants can kind of drop in, and either some people will have, questions that you can ask before the event and then they'll address them. Or it may just be a video presentation or a PowerPoint about their institution, a day in the life of the residents. And so these are other options for you to be able to make contact with programs that you're really interested in, but may not be able to rotate at.
Thank you so much. I think those were excellent points as well. I also have a question from someone about having an issue. They took CS and they bombed. They failed CS. And now they're having problems rebooking that exam because of COVID. So what should they do? I mean, they don't have the opportunity they may not have the opportunity to retake it or what have you. And we can replace CS with any exam at this point. So what do you think students in that boat who haven't had that chance to, say, oh, I didn't do well in step 1, but hey, I hit step 2 out of the park, that you use to see a trend and improvement. What do you want to say to that student?
That's a hard one. If they have taken, what about their CK? If that has, the skills, probably not as big of an issue, but the knowledge aspect of it, that would be interesting to see that part of it and see the level of improvement maybe from the step 1 score. But there has to be some sort of we know that there are those who may have issues with standardized test taking, and those who continue to have issues, and it may have even started in college. But it's important for them to recognize that and to have insight into those issues, and to take upon themselves ways to improve their ability to take standardized exams, and they need to verbalize that. It's not enough to just say, and I know once I get into dermatology, you know, that's my field, I'm going to do much better. You know, that's just not enough. You have to prove yourself. And maybe it's making sure that you don't have any sort of learning disabilities. And many I've had to counsel, they have found out that they were dyslexic, or maybe they needed extra test taking time, because these types of continued issues with the standardized exams will result in a program being concerned about your ability to pass the certification boards. And then that can be a red stain on the actual institution, where other students don't want to come to this place that residents can't pass the boards. And so many times, yes, it can be an issue on the candidates that we do accept into the program. And so looking at this now and addressing it even beforehand or in between the year before potential dermatology residency, it's extremely important to address it now and to figure out what are the reasons why. Is it the inability to afford review courses? Are there certain things that you just can't grasp in those standardized exams? Maybe you need to take or review more of those types of questions. Maybe you've been studying alone all by yourself all this time, and you need to get with a group that can help bring you up, those who are doing well. And it seems a lot of times those who are not doing well tend to isolate themselves. They don't want to engage with others, but this is not the time. You have to help yourself as well.
Yeah, that was a tough question. I thank you for jumping in and tackling that one. But her answer had many layers, because it can really apply to multiple people at different stages of their training. And when she said that, hey, I've had someone who I counseled and they ended up being dyslexic, think about how freaking smart that person had to be to get to medical school and be dyslexic. So, you know, like she said, you can't discount people, right? You have to try to find the cause and get help for that, for sure. And there have been a couple of questions in the chat about IMGs, or international medical graduates. You know, I know that there was an issue with visas and different hospitals and all of these things, and so there's a lot of angst about that. Can anyone speak to that issue?
So we actually have currently in our class a resident who is an IMG, and I would say she just stood out, right? So I would say, I wish I could say it's an easy road, but in some ways, there are some applicants that may have to work a little bit harder, and it's not fair, but I mean, she was just a stellar applicant. So she had taken a year off. She was very productive. She had letters from people who were well respected in the field, and she just fit in very well. And so I think it was you couldn't even really see that she was an IMG because she was just stellar, right? But I think in some ways we are trying to change that now. We're trying to change how we select our residents, but right now it's going to take really sort of coming up with ways to make your application stand out. So doing your best to get to know, not if you know, getting to know programs, as many programs as you can, reaching out to see if they have any projects, or if you are able to, I usually would try to find a paid fellowship so that you can work with someone, they get to know you, they can write you a strong letter. One of the things that we love to hear when we are reviewing applications, we love to hear how, I would love to work with this person. They're so easy to work with. And then you look at their application and you're like, gosh, they're solid. We just can't wait to work with someone like that. We feel so lucky. And so I think doing your best, again, to just find good, I can't emphasize how important mentorship is. And I keep harping on that because it's so important. Finding a good mentor, but again, someone who can also help you network, right? So having a mentor who can help you network, who can get you connected to others, to help you maybe, again, get more exposure, meet more people, get on more projects. And then you kind of, derm is really a small world. And then sometimes it comes down to who you know, right? So the more people you know, they can be like, oh yes, I remember that person, that's right, I read her paper. They will take a second look at you.
Thank you so much. And there have been some questions about, you know, again, you know, I am in a program with no, my medical school doesn't have a this or that. And how do I find a mentor? I haven't been able to do this. What advice would you give? So guess what? If you cannot find a mentor on your own, there are several dermatology organizations that have formalized mentorship programs. So let's start with our main national organization, the American Academy of Dermatology. We have an AAD diversity mentorship program. Now that is for medical students who may be interested in dermatology. So that's one. Now, not everybody can get everything, right? So it's great to have options. So the American Academy of Dermatology, they also have a medical student education portal that is available to all medical students. So if you want to be able to brush up on your dermatology knowledge or whatever it is, you know, it's all there for you, okay? Also, the Skin of Color Society. So Skin of Color Society has several mentorship programs, but we have a huge mentorship program for medical students. And because this is the time of COVID and everything has turned upside down, for those organizations that do have formalized mentorship programs, you may want to even just reach out and say, hey, I am in this situation. Do you have someone in your organization that can speak to me? Also, the National Medical Association has a dermatology section. National Medical Association has a dermatology section. And I'm sure if you reached out to them, they would be able to say, hey, what region are you in? Let's match you up with someone, right? So there are formal ways to do this as well. But at your level, of course, you may not have even known that these other organizations existed. So just write those names down: Skin of Color Society, the American Academy of Dermatology, and then a lot of the subgroups. So there's a nail society. There is a chemical peel society. I mean, so there we have societies for every society for pediatric dermatology. You know, you can get matched with a mentor. So it just goes on. Medical dermatology society. It goes on and on and on. But what you want is to be able to build a connection with someone, so that they can help you through the process. But also you want to be able to get to the point where they can sponsor you. Now, I am grown, and I have just realized in the last couple of years what sponsorship really means. And I did benefit from sponsorship. So you are open and honest with your mentor, you pour it all out, you show that you are super dedicated, and guess what? They will create opportunities for you. They say, hey, you know what? I have a project idea, and I am going to make sure that a piece of this project, this student who's working so diligently, I'm going to allow them to write this, co-write this paper with me, or be involved in this research project because I know that they're super dedicated. That's sponsorship, okay? So you would have never had that opportunity unless the mentor, you know, gave that to you. But that takes time to cultivate, right? That takes time to cultivate, and you have to build that relationship. But anyway, look at established mentorship programs that currently exist. Okay, so let's see. I'm looking at the chat. I don't know if any of the other panelists, we have about 9 minutes left. So are there any closing thoughts from the panelists? Are there any questions going on in the chat, or information that you really think that we should get out to the group of students who have joined us that we have not touched on?
I just want to say I agree with Dr. Keller and his sentiments with regards to what to do on the day of the virtual interviews. Your presence, your ability to communicate, and your speaking skills are going to be paramount, because they're looking at you from the neck up. And so it is important to look in the camera, not be fidgety. We have some of our residents, we do so many things by Zoom now. It's amazing. You kind of hone in on people, but people flipping their hair all the time and, turning this and that. You really need to put on your professional hat and be able to come across with the command, the audience that you want to have. So just remember that, practice. I love that. Dr. Heath, it's important to practice in the mirror, so you know what what you look like. Make sure you have plenty of lighting. We see that all the time, where the person is dark, but there may be a little lighter shadow behind them. So make sure that you are well lit, and you are still having that professional look. So that's one thing that I would say.
Just about mentorship as well. Don't ever underestimate how helpful your student deans at your medical school can be. Sometimes I think we blow off their advice because they don't know a lot about dermatology, but they may in fact know dermatologists. They may know people who are good mentors at your institution, who you may not readily have access to. So I think having a meeting with them and talking to them about that can be incredibly important, because their husband or wife could be a dermatologist and could say, well, I'd love to hook them up with one of my friends. So I think there are huge opportunities, and I think our students sometimes underutilize that student dean because they feel like they don't know a lot about dermatology and they don't understand how competitive it is. And I think some of those meetings are more generic. So don't ever underestimate, use all your resources, every single resource you have available. If you have a family friend or someone you met once who happens to be a dermatologist, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? You just don't know who they may know. So this is the circumstance where in the absence of an ability to really go on away rotations in a significant fashion, and an ability to do research and all the things that we would otherwise want to try to get people involved in, use every possible thing you have to your advantage.
And I would just piggyback off of that. Residents too. Get to know the residents from the program. We take to heart when a resident tells us, when they've interacted with one of the applicants and they say, this is someone I would like to work with. That means a lot. So get to know the residents of the program. They can give you the inside scoop to the program as well. But I think that that is also a source that you may find is going to be a little bit more easily accessible, especially on social media. There are a lot of people who are willing to help out on social media, who want to mentor, so take advantage of those opportunities. And one thing I just want you guys to remember, just like it's new to you, it's new to us. I mean, this is a whole new territory. Just like you guys are nervous, we're nervous too, all right? So we're kind of all in the same boat. And at the end of the day, just be yourself, right? Because that's kind of who we want to get to know. But at the end of the day, just be yourself. And just remember, we're all in the same boat. And, it's all about just kind of being true to yourself and letting that come across. Good luck, everyone.
Dr. Luke, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share with the students?
I just want to just encourage everyone to believe in yourself and your capabilities. Even if your road may take a little bit longer, or you have to do something, especially in light of COVID, that may slightly delay your process, that's okay. The end result is that you will be a dermatologist. So if this is really what you want to do, and you know that without a shadow of a doubt that you want to be a dermatologist, then keep pushing and stay encouraged, because no matter what, you know, it may, like I said, be a different type of road, but you can still get to the finish line. And so everybody's has a lot of like individual questions. And so like everybody's been talking about, I can't emphasize enough, really getting in front of somebody and speaking to them about your specific situation. We can definitely give general guidance, but it's really, you know, the mentor that you select will really know your circumstances and be able to give you the best guidance and advice that they can. Someone briefly mentioned in the chat about African American women and hairstyles. And so I was just going to touch on that really briefly. Thankfully, I think natural hair is definitely being, you know, celebrated more, and it's definitely more widely accepted, especially compared to when I did my training. So just be you. I think I put that in the chat earlier. Be you, be your unique self. You know, if you normally wear your hair in braids, then wear your hair in braids. If you normally wear your hair natural or curly, I know sometimes people feel this intense pressure to either conform or to look a certain way that they think other people might think is most appropriate. Really, we want you to be you. And there are so many programs around the country that really do celebrate and embrace all of our diversity. So I would just encourage whatever you feel most comfortable with, just that's what you should do.
I'm glad that you also addressed that as well. And I would like to really thank the co-sponsors of this event, the Student National Medical Association, and I've said it a million times, but I did not have any physicians in my family whatsoever. And when I discovered the SNMA, that was basically the equivalent of a family member in medicine that I never had. So I'm very, very grateful for the SNMA. Also, this program is being co-sponsored by the Latino Medical Student Association as well, a very strong association, and also the Tour for Diversity as well. So I want to say thank you to those organizations for allowing me to put this wonderful panel together, and I hope that I've exposed you all to some program directors that you may not have known before. That was the total goal. And so I thank you so much for attending, and I do want to be respectful of the panelists' time. So I will bid you farewell and good night. And my final 3 words to you are to go for it. Yes, go for it. Go for it. So good night, everyone. Thank you for all of the, thank yous in the chat. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Have a great one.